three-part topic here, the good, the bad, and the debatable, with regard to post-harvest quality and health issues in organic fruit. Okay, part one, the good. There's an assumption, somewhat justified, that organic post-harvest methods to control pests and maintain product value are not effective enough. We just have to avoid the really harsh methods, so our soft methods just are not obviously always effective. But what I see is that there is evidence now that organic methods are actually being adopted by the non-organic fruit industry. And I can't go through it in extensive detail, so in this presentation I just picked one example, and it's the control of superficial scald in apples and pears. Superficial scald is a nasty little disorder that shows up on certain varieties of apples and certain varieties of pears. And the historical method of control in recent times has been the post-harvest application of a chemical, diphenylamine, which is effective more so on apples than on pears, but it is allowed on pears, or ethoxyquin, a sister compound that is only used on pears. Both of these are not acceptable for organic fruit, so the push was on for the organic fruit folks to find alternate methods. So here's what has developed for the organic fruit industry. The only acceptable method for those folks is storage in very low oxygen conditions. What I'm talking about is less than 0.7% oxygen in that range. That is severely low. It has been shown, this has actually been shown since, if you go into literature, starting in 1900. There was a gentleman in the US who did some pure nitrogen gas treatments and made the observation casually that there seemed to be this slight benefit. You go through the history, there are repeated reports of this kind of effect of pure nitrogen gas, but everyone was scared silly of trying to store fruit in virtually zero oxygen. That was supposed to destroy it. Well, it doesn't. It simply doesn't destroy the fruit. So I pursued this myself, and we came up with a dynamic control atmosphere storage technology called Harvest Watch, which we can use to protect ourselves. It determines the low oxygen limit, and we now have it in over 800 to 900 rooms of apples and pears in about, at the moment, 15 countries. This is the guts of it. It doesn't use any chemicals. It has a sensor that's flashing with red lights over the fruit. That data is transmitted through hubs, etc., to the computer. And when the fluorescence that it detects suddenly spikes, that tells the operator that you've reached the low oxygen limit, and you just raise the oxygen back up about 0.2 or 0.3%, and that's where you keep your fruit for 10, 12 months. Okay? So here is an example on the left. This is just normal CA stored, 2% oxygen, 3% oxygen stored apple fruit with scald. They're simply not marketable. 100% loss. Same fruit stored with that low oxygen technology, 100% marketable. Okay, so that comes around to the question, well, if the organic folks have moved into this, what about the actual myth that DPA is the only trick in the game? Well, obviously it isn't. Well, is it actually necessary? So this question has been tested by the apple industry in the South Tyrol region of Italy. It's actually that part of Italy up against the Austrian border. Okay, so it's in the Italian Alps. They have a very substantial industry. The amount of stored apples there is in tons, over 800,000 tons. That is about 4 times more than the entire apple crop in Canada. okay, just in that one part of Italy. So there's a significant amount of apples at risk in this industry-wide experiment they took on. They decided to stop using DPA, and this is in conventional organic. It didn't matter. They just wanted to go cold turkey, no more DPA. They did that in the year, storage year 2010-11, and they're now in their second storage season without any DPA applied in any apple. Okay? There's the punchline. They found it didn't have to be used. DPA is no longer necessary. Okay? So here's the actual data. I just got this a few days ago for the second year. The most popular alternative is either DCA or MCP. Now MCP, you know, is Smart Fresh. That is being used instead of DPA for the non-organic part of the crop. So you can see here the normal, this is the standard CA for quick marketing. That's this color here. MCP is put on about 18% of the stored crop. DCA, low oxygen technology, 15.7. The ones in bigger letters are also organically oriented. This is ELOS, which is short for initial low oxygen stress, where they just hit it with a low oxygen, maybe 0.5% for 1 or 2 weeks, and then bring it back up to a normal CA. That is effective for short to medium storage periods for scald control. ELOS Plus is a slight enhancement where the plus means they hit it with the low oxygen and then they bring the oxygen up until the presence of ethanol, which is an indicator of fermentation, disappears. And then there's a small amount here where it's a combo. Sorry, there's DCA Light, where they backed off on the number of sensors. They use one sensor per room of 1,000 bins or so. That's very small. That sensor is only measuring 6 apples to control the whole bin, 1,000 bins. It's called DCA Light. These are for the experienced operators, okay? But there's these combinations here where MCP is put on at the beginning and then held in either ELOS Plus or DCA. And this would be for fruit that are going to be held for at least 10 months. Small size fruit, slow to move to market, so they bring them out in the air for after 10 months. They still have 2 months of them sitting in air, so that the combo pack is for those late removed fruit. And there it is. They've turned the page, no more DPA. Well, is this only on some varieties? No, here's an example. The DCA data was given to me. They broke it out for me. So the DCA is now being used on over 14 cultivars. You can go right down through here. It's pretty well covering almost every major apple variety, so they're not being limited by it only being effective on some varieties but not others. In fact, it can be used on Braeburn, whereas MCP doesn't really work very well in Braeburn. Okay, latest story on actual official status for use of ethoxyquin. It's no longer approved. DPA was taken off. Initially, they started the process a year or 2 ago. There was an appeal to keep it on. Final EU decision on DPA was made this month that removes DPA from the approved list. This is from a gentleman I know, personal communication. He said they adhered a verbal report, but as it says here, this needs to be confirmed in writing. So it looks like if this is true, the European industry, conventional or organic, has just said enough of that particular chemical. So I'm quite happy with how the organic people led the way and taught everyone, it's all right, you can get away from some of these chemicals and you're going to be much better off. There's actually money saved in this whole process as well. Okay, part 2, the bad. There is an incorrect and potentially dangerous assumption that organic post-harvest methods for controlling pests, by definition, are safe for humans and the environment. If it's organic, it's safe. Wrong. Okay? Here's the sad story of Muscador albus. It's a cautionary tale. It's a fungus, naturally occurring, proved to be very effective biofumicant in research trials controlling both bacteria and fungi. It was discovered by a professor from Wyoming on a cinnamon tree in the botanical garden in Honduras. You know, it's one of those Hollywood movies where this guy goes hunting and he finds this thing, he brought it back. Turned out he did some things by accident in the lab, and it killed everything around it, bacteria and fungi. You're laughing, maybe you've heard the story. It's true. And what's going on here? Well, he began to look closer at this organism. I gave it a name, Muscador albus, and did some analysis, found that, this is an important point, he did some GC mass spec to see what was going on. There were volatiles coming off this fungus. They all looked just normal alcohols, all kinds of organics from known chemistry, regarded as safe. This is really a good story, right? So it was licensed to AgriQuest Incorporated, who intended to market it. It was approved by the EPA, and it was approved by the Organic Materials Review Institute. All right, next page. What's this? It's N-methyl-N-nitroso isobutyramide. Google it. You won't find much on it. I really can't give you much of the toxicity behind it, but it's an interesting story. AgriQuest was quite troubled by the fact that if you took, and I've worked on Muscador albus, so I've been one of the researchers saying, wow, this is the greatest thing ever, right? Kills bacteria, kills fungi, human pathogens. We could use it as soil fumigant, it killed everything. Apple, there's no more apple replant disease when you use this. It was wonderful, okay? Sorry? Yes, and I believe me. But we tried to reproduce the results with the volatiles that had been reported. So you make a cocktail with butyric acid, blah, blah, blah. We couldn't get the results. Unknown to us, AgriQuest was finding the same thing that they could not recreate. And they've always said, even biologicals, there's an active ingredient. Spinosad, they know what the active ingredient is, okay, et cetera, et cetera. They couldn't reproduce the same efficacy. They did find the active ingredient. It was identified by the company, this compound, after they changed the gas chromatograph analysis program to a lower temperature, which did not break down this chemical compared with a higher analytical temperature of 220 degrees Celsius. CSI, you know, you see the guy injecting and out come the peaks. Well, it's going into a gas chromatograph, running at a certain temperature. Well, that temperature, unwittingly, had destroyed this active ingredient. And when they did an ethanol eluate and extracted that, put it through at a colder temperature, boom, up come this new peak. They identified it, this compound. Read the second point. This is where your jaw drops on the floor. That chemical failed the toxicology test. It is acutely lethal in a rodent inhalation model at rates only a few fold higher than required for control of post-harvest pathogens. As this was reported to me by the chemist from AgriQuest, who said, we killed the project but not the investigators. And I'm looking at myself and my technician, my staff, thinking, we walked around this stuff. They've found other species of this in other trees in other parts of the world. These are natural fungi in our environment, and they'll kill rats. Okay, there we go. AgriQuest suspended its plan to commercialize this biological pesticide that had been approved as safe and organic. And we, in 2009, were no longer getting supplies. We didn't know why. Now we know. The debatable. You can waste a lot of time on this topic, and we won't do it here. There's an ongoing debate about the nutritional value and safety of organic fruits and vegetables. I heard some allusions to that this morning as well. We all have our own personal opinions, but curb your enthusiasm, because quite often our enthusiasm gets ahead of our scientific facts, okay? Bottom line is there's no clear indication of organic fruit being better or worse than conventional fruit. Well, that's because sample size of scientifically valid papers is too small. We just don't have enough valid scientific studies to settle this debate. Majority of so-called authoritative papers have faulty methodology. They're just not scientific, okay? Just flat out fail the scientific acid test. Conventional production methods are becoming similar to organic methods, and I think I've heard of actually some organic fruit being pushed through the conventional marketplace. So when someone in the nutritional department goes to the local supermarket, buys conventional, blah, 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 you know, what they think is conventional may be quite close to the organic, okay? And many of the debaters are specialists in other fields, microbiology, medicine, nutrition, but they are not horticultural scientists. They are easily fooled. Because horticultural scientists recognize fruit quality, safety attributes are easily manipulated regardless of production philosophy, whether you're in an organic system or a conventional system. You, as a horticultural scientist, can tweak your final outcome by any one or more of these. The crop load, the nitrogen you put on, which will up your fresh yield, but not your density. Put more water on, same story. You can tweak your cultivar, your rootstock, your plant age maturity. You can tweak your method, your storage time, pest and soil management with mulching, etc., etc. Totally torque your final results. But those folks don't appreciate that, but I think you folks do. Here's the final, one of many examples. This is Honeycrisp under one production system. And we have here on the left, they're all 24 apples, okay? On the left, no thinning. Next one is 9 fruit per centimeter squared of trunk cross-sectional area, okay? Then 6 and then 3. So the 3 is very low crop load. And you can sample those. If I gave you some of the apples across in those 4 groups, you come up with totally different. The ones under 3, you just drool eating them. You can sample them. All the parameters are there. It's a winner. You sample the other ones, you'll spit them out, okay? And in the game, unfortunately, for horticulturalists, production people, they have to grow for yield. Consumers eat for the quality of a single fruit in their mouth. That wow factor, the flavor, etc. They don't buy yield. And there's a balancing act that the industry is always having to fight. You can't live on 3 fruit per trunk cross-sectional area. And if you go for yield, when you get the left, no one's going to buy it. Somewhere in the middle is a balancing, okay? So, I know you're standing there, and I suppose I got carried away, but
That's fine.
And I didn't want to belabor it, but I think all of those are those 3 controversial points, and I could have talked about the last one for hours.
That is a big topic, and I think a lot of us are familiar with it, and the difficulty of really trying to split apart a lot of the studies that we see, and some of these are meta-studies and looking at other studies, and trying to understand the differences in nutritional value, fruit quality, et cetera, between different kinds of production systems. So that is a good point to end with. But we're getting close to the end of our session here. So first, a round of applause for